Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Health Tech Edge, where we talk about the latest topics in healthcare technology with industry experts. Joining us today is our weekly panelist, Raheel Retiwalla, Chief Strategy Officer at Productive Edge. And our special guest today is Eric Daiter, Manager, Market Strategy and New Ventures at Catalyst by Wellstar. Thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Morning, Zoe.
So today we're going to talk about innovation in healthcare. Catalyst by Wellstar is a really interesting organization. It's a hospital system that created this innovation arm. Eric, can you tell us what struck you about Catalyst by Wellstar? Why did you choose to join such a unique company?
Yeah, so my background has been in growth. Anything having to do with affecting change within healthcare. And a piece of why Catalyst by Wellstar is intrinsically successful is because it's coming from within the hospital system. So Wellstar can come up with the most important problems that it's seeing within its hospitals, post-acute, ERs, its healthcare facilities, create that list and then directly affect the change by either finding people who are working on it now or creating that solution. So it's been an awesome experience to work with a healthcare provider who is actively trying to solve some of these problems.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Eric. I think the idea of growth, when coupled with the opportunities in healthcare to drive efficiencies and care management, et cetera, when you combine the two, they're really powerful ideas. And healthcare hasn't traditionally looked upon that as both as opportunities, if you may, right? I mean, there's always this thing about let's be more efficient at providing care, of course, driving costs down. But then the other side of the equation, of course, is growth and profitability and all of that. So, like Catalyst from Wellstar, we've seen this occur at many other organizations, both on the payer side, by the way, payer side as well as the provider side, as more and more payers are thinking about, what does end-to-end care delivery mean? There's areas and opportunities for innovation and growth opportunities there. When health systems are thinking about opportunities, I'm curious how much of growth conversations drive that, and what does really, when we say growth, what does it mean?
Yeah, a great question. So for us, from a healthcare perspective, growth means something totally different than a different innovation arm. So for us, it's truly focused on patient care, right? So if you look at the healthcare industry, specifically in the United States, in some ways, innovation that we're seeing in other industries skipped us, right? So there are processes, operational efficiencies, technology that's being used with it across the healthcare system that's not in tandem with what you're seeing in other groups, just because of regulation. It's involving patients' lives. There's multiple different regulatory bodies that are involved. So for us, and what I'd imagine for the larger healthcare industry, growth is really involved in finding the perfect relationship between the patient experience and providing effective care. So sometimes it's not always in tandem. So patients want this seamless experience. They want one place where they can go for all of their remedies. They want efficient and effective care. And if you look across the healthcare, the U.S. healthcare system, those patient intricacies aren't always being hit on. And so for us, growth is not necessarily growing our presence. That's obviously an important factor, but it's how do we grow into the future by finding these perfect patient experiences and creating that operational efficiency within our healthcare system.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. And I think it adds a lot of context to overall the role of innovation within healthcare itself. which actually begs a question: the amount of it, the amount of technology that's that is in healthcare, and the amount of technology that continues to be available in healthcare, whether it might be just the role of AI and the role of automation, the role of home care, medical devices, wearables, you name it. There's just the spectrum of innovation is extensive. In some ways, I feel there's a shift to being more race to the top type approach, where how do we identify what are the components that, when put together, can drive this growth. The challenge, of course, is there's an element of what can really actually stick with humans that are involved in providing the care or receiving the care or thinking about things. How do you balance sort of this race to the top thing, the rate of innovation, which is speeding up, and then in the end, actually, it's humans that have to consume this and actually do things with, right?
Yeah, so I think it's funny because when we bring up things like automation, we bring up things like machine learning. These are cutting edge technologies that you're seeing in industries who have had steady and rapid innovation all throughout the 90s, all throughout the 2000s. Healthcare is still in its fundamentals, needing focus on connecting platforms, finding operational efficiencies within connected healthcare systems, working with payer providers to most effectively create predictive care. And so obviously the new cutting edge technology is something we'll probably start to see within clinical care settings within the next 5 to 10 years. But when we're thinking about some of these new innovations, and to the founders out there who are potentially coming up with these ideas, learn the industry. So like find your customer discovery, because I think what's interesting about healthcare, and you see this in other highly regulated and people-focused industries, there's tons of different players. There's tons of these different pieces that are connected to solving a problem. And sometimes it's the really simple solutions, those fundamental, well-executed technologies, either platforms, connected services, that are the real need for hospital systems and healthcare systems before we jump to let's throw machine learning and AI into surgery rooms. It's all amazing work, and it's things that are really important that we're going to see to benefit surgeons and hospital groups. But sometimes I think there's got to be a group focus on creating those fundamentals as well.
Right. We actually had Dr. Arif Nazir, who's the Chief Medical Officer from Bright Spring, on the Health Tech Edge a couple of weeks ago, and this is really his feedback, very similar, right? Which is, look, at the end of the day, I need my team to have better training, better tools to actually help them do what they need to do day in and day out.
Right.
It's quite interesting when you think about the leapfrogging that could be happening using technology and innovation. You hear, of course, the spectrum of capability, opportunities is tremendous. I mean, you hear about disease management, you hear about, sensor technologies, and you hear about med tech. It's that balance, that core. I think, as you said, entrepreneurs and founders have to think about and understand, healthcare as in, how will I land this today? Where can I make an impact today? And how can I build on top of that over time as processes mature, as people become more comfortable with relying on technology, because there's also a trust factor that has to be built. Information. So.
And that's a unique thing as well about both the healthcare industry and Catalyst by Wellstar. Some of these challenges, so if you look at the average surgeon, let's say, their job is to obviously keep patients alive, right? They go into their surgeries. Patient care is their main focus. And giving them an easier experience on how to do that is sometimes an ambiguous challenge, right? So there are tons of different ways you can do it. You can put more technology in the operating room as an example. You can give them greater tools and more efficient software tools to better do their job. But I think what's really important, and something you hit on, Raheel, that is important for us, is creating that list of the top challenges, right? So instead of coming from an outside and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with what you're seeing in other industries, there are very unique and intrinsic challenges that the healthcare industry is seeing across its different partners, and just finding those challenges, creating that list, and then working on those specifically and knocking it off the list, doing your customer discovery. These are the things that are going to enable change over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. I'm curious as to your thoughts, and I know Zoe and I are both talking about it earlier. When it comes to Wellstar, it's a relatively large healthcare system. So when you think about Catalyst as an innovation arm spawned out of Wellstar, there's a ready set of challenges that you said the list, right? I mean, easier to discover the list when you're living it day to day kind of thing, right?
Right.
I'm curious your thoughts on the health systems that are not large. How can they participate in this journey when they're still struggling? Even like the 5, 6, 7, 8 hospital health systems, they're still struggling to figure out how best to transition from the use of an EMR. I mean, the sophistication. There's just tons of still gaps and areas for opportunity. In fact, we had someone, Safi Mansour, the UMass Memorial, last week on our show, who talked about just organization not being able to actually just take advantage of data and just normally data and analytics and satisfying the needs of the various stakeholders. I'm just curious, what would you recommend for the mid and smaller size health systems? How can they participate in this journey like you're on right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we, even at a larger scale, is always going to be a question, especially when there's patient lives that are being affected by some of the solutions that you're testing. So in my suggestion, the first step is to get that executive buy-in, right? You need leadership to agree, to see that change as necessary and intrinsic to moving forward. And then with that buy-in, create a testing ground. So there's tons of founders who are creating various solutions. There's tons of people who are trying to connect various services, and sometimes it's not the easiest from a software perspective, because just the nature of how things like EHRs connect with each other. That's a discussion for a different political background. But in my opinion, create the testing ground within your facilities in a safe and repeatable way for potential either startups or potential new softwares, potential new hardware developments to come into your facility, try something out, come in with a specific set of KPIs that they are going to hit on, whether it's some KPI involving patient care, something involving time spent, right? It doesn't always have to be a cost thing. It can also just be, right, like how are you benefiting the actual patient and clinical provider? Create that smaller program and that ability to demo a product, and then have the conversation from there. Create the proof that you can then take to leadership or different stakeholders to create larger change, in my opinion.
Very true. I mean, this is a model that's effectively been adopted and done in other industries pretty well. So there's certainly parallels to be able to pick it up and and run with it is, very similarly as you've described. And I think, there is really an opportunity for Catalyst and organizations like Catalyst to help play a role in there, to be able to convey these ideas and be able to talk about how best to operationalize these things and what it takes to do that. So looking forward to hearing more about your thinking there and advice to health systems in the future. So
yeah, it's an interesting problem, right? Because it's you obviously run a certain financial risk which comes with any sort of investment, but there's also the risk of implementation, right? You're risking the experience of the patient. So just doing that customer discovery, making sure you have the correct research and what KPIs you'd like to focus on, and then working with vendors to figure out who's the right solution to do this, and then executing it in a small demo environment. I think that's the incremental change that's needed.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. And I love that we've been focusing more on high-level strategy and really where to focus your efforts best if you're going to start doing innovation in healthcare. What I want to know is, where are the areas of opportunity for healthcare disruption that you're seeing? Like, where are you focusing on innovation and disruption at Catalyst by Wellstar?
So operational efficiency. So Catalyst by Wellstar has a specific set of genres of innovation that they're looking for, from digital health, operational efficiencies. Those are all detailed within our strategy, right? From my personal opinion, from an industry perspective, anything operational efficiency, connected services, improving UX and UI of current tools, and providing efficiency for how doctors and clinical representatives are interacting with those tools, and how it's connected to other software systems. Like Raheel mentioned before, things like any sort of automation, any sort of machine learning that can be incorporated into the practicing of care. That's essential as well. And so I think it's an interesting time because technology is finally catching up with the rate of change. So before, we had systems that are a bit clunky. You need to get sign off from those regulatory bodies. Now we're seeing tons of success from both a software and a hardware perspective in industries that are in tandem to healthcare. And now, in my opinion, you're going to see those same innovations start to trickle in and really take hold of within some of these clinical providers. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time to see some of this change over the next couple of years.
Definitely.
We ascribe to your sentiment. Absolutely, Eric. Totally with you on that.
Perfect.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Raheel. Thanks, Eric, for joining us. Thank you, everyone else, for tuning in. Next time, we're going to talk with Nick McKenzie from Redox. So make sure you tune in next week. That's it for Healthcare Edge. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.